We have quorum. We have 7 people here right now, so we are good to begin. It's going to be a relatively quick meeting because one of our agenda items was to have Goddard Riverside present to us, but this meeting was moved twice, and my co-chair, I do not believe, will be able to join us tonight, Avi. So I think that there was a miscommunication. They didn't realize that we were having the meeting tonight. So we will not hear from Goddard tonight. But, do keep in mind, I can always just call them over the summer rather than have them come in and present. And I definitely will communicate with them by email about some of the district needs over the summer. So this is our June meeting. We are not scheduled, as a committee in CB7, we are on hiatus over the summer. We are not scheduled to have another meeting until September. If we want, and we do have a task force, makes sense to me that the task force can continue to meet over the summer as needed. I do not believe the task force, I actually have to find this out, has the same kind of open meetings rules. So my hope is that they can meet remotely. They certainly are still communicating with one another via email to keep it moving. So our agenda items were Goddard, they're not here, early childhood task force, and district needs. The other one that Seema's presence is sort of reminding me of is just to give you a very brief overview or reminder about the presentation about the Bloomingdale Library that we received at full board last night. Actually, we're going to go in reverse order because that's the easiest. Bloomingdale Library, I hope everyone was at full board and saw the presentation last night. This is going to be an ongoing issue. And it's long-term. As I said, they don't expect construction until 2028. We don't anticipate a new library until 2031. There will be a ULURP process before that, but they are doing their first round of community engagement now. So between now and on a shockingly short schedule until September, I'm assuming that's just the first of a few rounds of community engagement. We should all take a look at what they shared as plans. We should feed back to their survey. I already took it. It's pretty brief. And we'll help promote that survey as much as we can so that A, people know this is coming downstream, and B, so people can start to express their priorities very early on so they have a vision of what they want in that new library. Are there any questions or comments about the library plan at the moment?
Kristen, this is Richard.
Yeah.
The timeline presented by the library people is frightening, and the reason it's long, among others, is that first they have to do a request for proposal, which was going to take a long time, and only after the selection of a bidder will they start the ULURP process. I don't see any reason why the city, as the owner of the property, can't start the ULURP process simultaneously with the request for bids. Would save a year at least.
I think you're right. It would save a year. That they said those RFPs aren't until January. Go ahead, Ira. I don't know.
I can answer that.
Go ahead.
First of all, I think they're trying to designate somebody before the end of the mayoral term. That's one thing. Two, the ULURP is not just for the disposition of city property. They're not being entirely forthright, but based on their calculations of 850 units and an R7-2, even if they made the zoning law to include PS 163, the math doesn't work. 850 units plus the library is. I sent this over to I think Seema and to her co-chair and to the community board chair. If you take the rough math, this is a building somewhere between 800 and 1,000,000 square feet, depending on the size of the unit and the distribution of the units. So basically, if you look at what they presented, they said we're taking advantage of the city of yes. So it's not just a disposition of city property. They're very open about that. They want 850, if it's 850 units and you do the math, and they tell you the size of the site, it's roughly anywhere from 15 to 20 stories. And so this means all sorts of changes need to happen. And so it's not just a disposition of city land. You happen to actually need an actual design for building to find out what you need in the ULURP.
I think that's right, but it's all the more reason why they can get started quickly.
You can do the disposition of city land, which is one ULURP, but the other piece of it, which is the zoning piece, is pointless because you're not going to get anybody to take the project in any case with a R7-2 because there's not enough space there to pay for the library, the Department of Health. It just doesn't work. They're not having.
I think I appreciate that. I think there's going to have to be either a map change or special permit or something to enable them to build a building that size. The question is, why can't it start now?
Because they don't.
I've had my hand up and nobody's letting me speak.
Okay.
Because
Audrey,
they don't know the
Audrey,
design.
I couldn't see your hand.
You can't see my hand?
Can I just finish? Just finish for a second. You can't
finish up, Ira, and then we're going to pass it on.
You can't do the RFP, the ULURP for the building itself until you know what the design is, because it's going to be very specific. They may actually it may not fit into any known zone. So it might be our remapping is very likely, because when they say city of yes, they probably mean like R11 or R12 to get where they're going. I'm just hypothesizing. And at that, they may need some additional relief from the ULURP to get that building in there. It's a building that's very similar in size, but maybe even larger to the JHL building. So what surprised me, and I'll just leave it at this because I see a lot of hands up here, having done enough of these RFPs with the EDC or with HPD or so forth, I'm a little surprised that they haven't done more work on it, and I believe they have. So
okay, Ira, I'm going to have you hold
enough.
there. I'm actually going to defer to Seema next because most likely our committees are going to co-chair on this issue.
Yeah.
So Seema, you're the chair of the
Can I have Audrey go before me? I saw she had her hand up first, so I'm happy to go after.
Okay, go ahead, Audrey.
I'll be very brief. I live around the corner from the property in question, and there is space in the surrounding properties, parking lots owned by Park West Village or whatever it's called over there. And I have a feeling they can enlarge the space if it's needed. But it's a brilliant idea to take two very low-rise buildings that are very horizontal and turn them into very important housing. So I'm all in favor, although I certainly understand people with more expertise than me have raised other issues. But when you look around at the parking spots and the fact that the current owners of the parking spots don't really need them for reasons I won't bore you with, although I could tell you more.
Thank you, Audrey. Yeah, I've noted that it's an oddly low-rise block, right?
Right.
But go ahead, Seema, because I also want to think a little bit about process that we see going forward.
That's all I'm talking about. It's the process. It's not the timeline they've presented.
Yeah, I would suggest, I like the idea of doing some kind of joint meeting. And since their sort of timeline for input is so aggressive, meaning like over the summer, perhaps that's something we can do next month or something. Although, the land use committee might kill me. So two thoughts. One is they did allude to a rezoning. So, and I, like you, Ira, think it's going to be an R11 or R12, which are probably R11, but we'll see. I would agree with Richard though, like, can't we figure out a way with simply amassing, not, the final design of the building, but just knowing that, hey, we need this amount of square footage. Couldn't we sort of parallel process a little bit just to cut down some of that incredible time that it's going to take? And then secondly, I would also love for our committees to talk about, that block is, and I think this is what Audrey was alluding to, is a mess in terms of traffic because of the fire department and the police. And so how do we handle brand new construction and a whole bunch of new people on that block with the way it is now? And I'm hoping that there's some kind of garage underground planned that could maybe get some of those cars off the street. Who knows? But just something else to consider as we think about this, as well as the temporary situation.
You know what?
Hang on, Ira, I'm going to interject here with the planning from the CB7 end with SEMA, because I hear you about maybe trying to have a meeting over the summer. We know they're hard to do. So just like simply off the top of my head, I was going to ask them, why are they closing this consultation in September? Like, if these other parts aren't moving until later, can't they extend that?
I wonder if they can. The city planning department is doing something called the Manhattan Plan, and this is sort of adjacent to it. And they also had a very aggressive timeline of they wanted to be done by September, October. I spoke to them, and I think they can give us leeway so that maybe it's the first meeting in September that we talk about this or something. So if we push back, maybe there's a little,
because I think that's a really reasonable ask to be like, why don't they just extend that so that it's after the summer, we have time to consult with community a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Minna and then Michael.
Hi, it's Minna, not Minna. I was wondering whether or not in their conversation with the land use committee, they gave any indication of what would be in the RFP and whether or not they talked at all about what, it sounds like they didn't particularly talk about what heights they're thinking of or what they're expecting in terms of where the affordable housing will be in relationship to the non-affordable housing, the market rate housing.
Can I answer that? So actually, they haven't come to us. The presentation last night was the first time I think we as a community board have heard it. So everything is new.
But can I just chime in on that? I think they might have an idea of what the target is, whether that's going to be the RFP response or not is a different issue. I've worked on buildings roughly this size, but and you can actually, you get 200 units in there, you still have 600 units, 700 units of market, but it's a big deal. And I think they'll take some flexibility because I don't, once again, I'm going to talk in maybe SEMA's world and a couple other people on the board. But once again, is there realistically the financial capacity and right now the risk in the development community to take on this project as the mayor shifts? And public subsidy is not going to be on the table right away, if at all. I think that's their idea, is to try to, particularly for this neighborhood, try to do all the subsidy internally to the project. And that's what they made clear last night, that it has to cover Carey itself. Because they're going to be doing a lot of stuff that can't. They're doing a lot of stuff that can't carry itself. So I'm not so sure we're going to get as much affordable housing as we might have under other conditions. I think right now, Gary Barnett might be offering us a better deal than this building's going to offer us. Because Gary Barnett can make a whole lot more money and doesn't have to build a library.
Thank you, Ira. Go ahead, Michael.
Thanks. And just for folks who may not know, I know, Audrey, you were raising your hand earlier. In your Zoom at the bottom, there's a heart icon that says react, and it gives you the opportunity, if you click on that, to one of them is raise hand. So that's, I think, just good etiquette when we're in this format. I know hopefully we're not doing it too often, but that way it gives everyone an opportunity to speak in an orderly fashion. And in turn, I think I will say I was a little surprised that with the presentation last night and sort of the length of it, and the fact that this didn't start first in committee, and obviously it crosses boundaries here. But I think there part of the frustration I think some people might be feeling is that we didn't really have a lot of opportunity to talk and ask a lot of questions. We were just sort of something what feels a little half-baked was sort of dropped on everyone, and it's sort of left more questions than answers. So I think as far as like what we can do as a board, what our responsibilities will ultimately be as a board, I think right now we have an opportunity to try to partner with this group to at least get their survey out. It's something that we've been trying to do with other things in terms of just sharing information. So I think if there's a chance if they may just be doing it on their own already with using like the link systems and everything, but just ways that we can help more people participate in that survey so that they have a good turnout if they do end that process in September. And then, of course, I'm sure we will have multiple meetings on this in the coming years. And obviously, we have an advisory role in that as well, both as committee, joint committee, and then full board. So we have our place in this, but there's a lot that we don't know. I think there's speculation, and I don't think that your speculation is wrong. I was nodding along with you, but I think it's speculative at this point. So, I don't think we should drag out the conversations too long until we have concrete information that we can opine on. That being said, I think what we can do at this juncture, and Ira, you alluded to, in my opinion, what will be a monstrosity in this community, but Carey Barnett's building. But, I think we have an opportunity here to say, hey, this is what we're looking for in a library. This is what we're looking for in a residential unit. And, whether that's just an ongoing email thread over the summer to try to organize our thoughts, or that's holding a meeting. I think that's the value that we add at this moment. Let's try to get maybe some messaging together, and that'll be our first statement on this, sort of high level, similar to what was done with the ABC unit as well, with some of the sort of the language that was shared there.
Yeah, and before we move on, I just want to respond to what Michael said, because I think that's the most tangible thing we can do this summer is A, help get that survey out, but B, I want to speak to them directly, and maybe Seema will co-write this to find out what they're doing because it's really on them to make sure they're bringing in like community feedback. So I want to find out what they're doing to collect community feedback. Just a survey is not really going to be sufficient, right? So we'll share their feedback form. We'll ask them what else they're doing to enhance that feedback, and we'll ask for pushback so that there is actually time for us as a community board to speak to constituents and to hear back from them in September and share that information. Does that sound reasonable, Seema? Good. Okay. All right, Ira, you've spoken a bunch, so I'm going to let Roberta go next, and then Ira.
You're on mute.
I did. I'm slow to unmute. So unfortunately, I couldn't be at last night's meeting because my internet went down. But so I'm not as familiar with this as all of you are. But I think you have the right process, and I think you want to get the community involved as quickly as possible too. So, I'm going to suggest that you and your both committees, land use and YL, meet over the summer, at least informally, to kind of get organized, circulate as much as you can. And then you want to get community input. So I would recommend some kind of community forum with both committees, and maybe with the city agencies that are involved in this. So it may be libraries and whatever groups of city agencies should come together and whether it's an informal meeting to start and then a formal meeting in the fall, in September, October.
Yeah, I think Seema, I'm sorry, Ira, I'm going to let Seema respond to that again, because it was just an ask.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we should convene a meeting, maybe July is best. I'll defer to you about when exactly it should be. And even if we don't have a quorum, at least we start the conversation. Whoever can come will come. Chances are those are the people that are going to be most interested anyway. And we start, that process. And then everything we can do to publicize the survey, I think, is a great idea.
Yeah, and get them to present it again, because I think people would have just fluked it had they been at our full board last night.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than know they were coming to that presentation. My other question, though, process, and maybe Roberta or Seema, you guys know, do we ever do community forums out in the community rather than in the CB7 office?
Yes, we often, for example, when the 108th Street shelter was coming online, we met at the school.
Yeah.
We should do it at the library.
And we could certainly meet at the library has space. They will offer it to us.
Yeah.
But we definitely should meet. And there are other locations, but we definitely should meet in the community.
Right. The library is just an obvious one because that's at hand, right?
Yeah.
And thank you for waiting, Ira. Go ahead.
Okay. I also wanted to say, I think Seema and Richard and Audrey might remember the ECF proposals of a few years back, which none of the tranche that we had they came to pass, but they used an RFQ process and then chose to negotiate with the responses to the RFQ request for qualifications. And in that process, and they may very well resort to that if they're going to be doing this on a citywide basis, where they look for qualifications and then they rate the proposers. And in that scenario, you had to build a new school. And the response on one of them was that the successful proposer not only agreed to rebuild the two schools that were in the RFQ, but they built a third school. And guess who won? The guy who built the third school. But what they got were very major projects, but you had no idea what the design was. Now, I'll have to admit, I did 3 in that project. I responded to a lot of the RFQs, and I actually wrote some of the other RFQs. Didn't get to do any of the buildings, but that's another story. And that may be what they're going to do if they have to award a lot of these relatively quickly.
But one thing I hear from that, Ira, is aligned with what we were saying, in that whether they're using the RFP or this broader RFQ process, if we get the community priorities out to them before the vendors come back with a proposal, that sounds like the more reasonable process.
Well, you can get,
these are the priorities.
If they do something like that, you can get the priorities in. That doesn't necessarily mean you get them, because the question is, like I said, when one of the proposers threw in an extra school, everybody else was thrown out of the water. That the city got an extra school. If somebody says, I'm going to do something that's 30% affordable, and somebody else comes in at 15% affordable, maybe the health department moves somewhere else. I'm just telling you how the process ran.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know if they have the ability to, particularly because it's the EDC that's leading this, though I somehow or another have to believe that HPD is somewhere in this soup, because I've responded to HPD / EDC RFPs, and those actually got built. I did, not to get back to me, which I have a bad habit of doing, but I did one where they got the land. You had to build a community facility. We did a YMCA complete with a pool and some parking, and that came in, and we were the lucky winners, so to speak.
Okay.
Anyway, the long and short of it is, they're going to look at it as a totality of the project. And I don't think, if you're doing these citywide and you're doing 10 or 20 or 30 of these at a time, I don't think the fine tuning that we got on 108th Street is going to happen. That's one of my concerns. And I think it's a realistic concern.
Okay, Roberta?
Just really fast. CB7 has done best when we've decided in advance what our main priorities were. When we wanted a school at Riverside South, we didn't get it because it wasn't our top priority. When Riverside Center came on board, our top priority was a public school, and they could not get a C of O until we got the public school, and it's a state-of-the-art public school. So I think over the summer, start building priorities and then decide which are the most important, which are the ones that you could live without, and go for it.
Yeah, I always credit that requirement to have the school in there before they got the C of O was very, very valuable. And that's a good lesson learned. Do we have, so it sounds like right now the priority is doing a forum, increasing feedback, and helping CB7 design priorities by early fall. All right. Is there any more question or comment on the library building proposal? If not, we'll move on to the next agenda item. We have two more agenda items. One is about our early childhood task force. And I want to update us on what we know about the 1972 Broadway site. We convened a handful of YEL members and one of the CC co-presidents, I think is her title, Jill Rackman, and Naveed, who's been involved with us from the PEP. I got some email threads today, so I'm happy to update that. But Michael or Dan or someone else who was in those task force meetings, do you guys want to give us a little briefing and overview of what y'all are up to?
I can take it unless Dan, you want to take it. So basically we met, we sort of just kind of quickly kicked off and tried to sort of stress the urgency of the situation at 1972 and talked about some ways that we could try to increase sort of support for Gail's survey that she's put out, asking for folks, the community's feedback on that, and also considering some options that some additional steps that we could take. And so some of those, we've had some flyers made up and those are circulating around libraries in the neighborhood, businesses just around the neighborhood. And then also those were put up on the link kiosks in the neighborhood as well. I think, Alex, if you're still on the call, I think she helped with that. So thank you. We also have a letter in draft, and apologies to the rest of the task force because that was sitting on me for a bit. But that is basically just requesting more information. It includes, it's not finalized yet, but it includes messaging to both Gail's office, but also the Department of Education. So I think the hope is to try to get that out to run parallel to what Gail's doing on her own, just so that we can have something to point back to say, we've asked, we've heard in our meetings that, these claims that there's no demand or that there's these numbers out there where we're asking for that, trying to ask for that formally as well. And then we also discussed the possibility of just trying to take this story into a more public sphere, because right now it feels like it's a bit in the shadows and it's a bit confined to just a couple of groups that are interested in it and passionate about it, but it just hasn't gone out to a larger group. So trying to find ways and sort of a time to do that as well. There is a concern that with the impending now past Democratic primary for the city, that things might get lost in that story. So that's kind of where we left off.
So I was also in that meeting, and Jill had volunteered informally to start asking questions as head of the CEC. They were in the middle of the transition between, this year's CEC ending and the next year's beginning. She wasn't sure if she would be president next time, and I don't know if we know the answer to that, and I don't know if she was able to reach out to the superintendent and to the other people that she talks to with the informal ask that she was planning to make.
I can answer a little bit of that because the good news is that Jill was reelected to the council.
Right.
They don't do their executive board roles until their July meeting. It's like set in bylaws. So their July meeting, we'll find out what their roles are. And as a matter of fact, she can't be here tonight because there's a transition meeting for the CEC at the same time. So that's where she is tonight. I do know that she said that the superintendent did present on the issue at the last CEC meeting. So I know it's a very small expansion of who's aware of this problem and who's talking about it, but at least it was presented at the CEC so that that audience saw it as well. And go ahead, Dan.
Just to build on what Michael reported, the strategic idea behind the letter is to, in essence, call the DOE's bluff they're saying that there's no demand, but their refusal to release any data that probably contradicts what they're saying. The letter, at least, my guess is it won't lead to the result we're looking for, but it begins a process of calling their bluff and then gives us grounds if we go public to sort of say, listen, we asked for this data that DOE is denying it. My impression is Gail has done everything kind of she can following normal process and protocols, but if there's not an escalation here, that DOE is going to continue doing what they're doing.
I agree, Dan. Like this dragging their heels is going to keep happening. So I haven't gotten to, I have to admit, read the letter yet. I can pull it up on the screen to share it with the committee, but it also is something that we can sign off on because we've already approved a resolution about the site and about the need for an early childhood center. So it, as far as like process, it doesn't need approval. The little update I got today, I wasn't sure who was on this email thread, but Shula from Gail Brewer's office wrote back. So Shula is her chief of staff, and she said she's going to be the point person on this issue. So far, they've only gotten 78 responses to the survey. And she said just vaguely it will be open for another couple of weeks. So I did think we want to be in communication with them to establish how long it's open for so that we can continue to promote it and communicate that so we know when that deadline is. Go ahead,
sorry.
Dan.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Or
go ahead,
Dan,
Michael.
is your hand still up from before?
No, I hit it again.
I just wanted to give just a quick, sorry, Dan, to jump you and break etiquette on here. I think, I see Alex has her hand raised, but I think what we had on the kiosk side of it for that survey was only maybe through today or tomorrow. So if that is extending from Gail's side, I think we just need to revisit so we can make sure that that's still sort of like in the public eye in that sense. Sorry.
Okay.
I was just going to ask, and I'm assuming the answer, I shouldn't assume, is have we posted an invitation to do the survey on the various parents groups on the Upper West Side?
I don't know the answer to that. Do you know, Michael?
I thought there was something, is it chalkboard? I could have swore there was a chalkbeat. I could have swore there was like something there, but
like, for example, like we're members of the Upper West Side Moms Group, and that would be a natural place to post something to try and goose turnout.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think that like those groups are, informal, and they don't always want like officials kind of invited. But if you're already a member of the group, it makes sense to me that you would be like, "Hey, I want to share this thing."
I'm happy to do it. Mike, do we have any kind of
snowball that?
Do we have any kind of like template language that I could just cut and paste? And then is there a link that I could include?
Michael, we have a link to it, right?
It's been with a QR code. So that, there is a link. It also links, but Dan, we can also like sidebar on that. I can send that to you.
That would be great. And Alex.
Yeah, I was just going to add, if you have like a date that or kind of an idea of when you think the survey will be open, let me know, because I can continue to, I can ask if I can like extend it's showing on Link NYC, I can submit that request. And then also I can continue to put it in the newsletter so that it gets, as much people to see it as possible.
Yeah, so for right now, all I heard today was like another couple of weeks. So I'd say let's keep running it until we hear otherwise.
Yeah.
All right.
That sounds good.
Kevin? You're muted.
Sorry about that. I thought when we last talked about this issue, we had talked about promoting it on social media. So like Facebook, Blue Sky, and other relevant social media platforms that a lot of folks travel to, so that we can kind of increase, and cast a wider net.
So let me ask you about that. Do you think, well, I don't believe CB7 has a social media presence, do they? Or just not very well, like
Gail
attended?
does.
Gail certainly. Is that what you just said, Roberta? Gail does? And she has a lot of followers. So we can definitely ask her office to promote it. The only other lane I would maybe see is if we actually made like an account, on X or Blue Sky and called it something. I don't know what. And then
Or is there a way to kind of share that with affiliated groups that have a Blue Sky account or a Facebook account? Or again, I'm not versed in social media, so not being a millennial, but in order to cast a wider net, that way there's more visibility.
Kevin, in the past, we've had social media and if we had 45 followers, it was a lot. So it really needs to go to the upper web, the Facebook moms group or any other groups that people are affiliated with. Gail probably is the best source for that.
I think Dan raised his hand and then Seema.
Yeah, I just did a search on Facebook. There is a page for CB7 and it has 866 followers.
All right. Alex, I assume you have access to that? Someone in the office?
To which account?
Facebook.
I would have to double check, actually. I don't believe the Facebook has been actively used since I got to CB7, but I can look into it.
Do you guys have like a Blue Sky or a Twitter account?
I believe we have a Twitter account.
Because if you post something on your Twitter account, it's much easier for us to like repost that and share it with other people.
Mm-hmm.
If there's just a base somewhere, and then we can try to like replicate it out.
Yeah, I can look into that and we can coordinate to see if we can post something.
Michael and Dan, since you're doing some of the language on that, do you want to stay in communication with Alex on that? And maybe we'll get like a basic post with like, a line or two and the link or the QR code.
Sorry, you froze right when you were speaking. Oh. I heard we're doing some of the language and
the link or the QR code with Alex to post on CB7 social media, and then hopefully individuals can repost that and share it.
Sure.
Yeah, you can reach out to me. I'd have to double check to see which accounts we have access to, but I'll take a look.
Excellent.
And I would strongly lobby for having a direct link and not just a QR code. A lot of people aren't necessarily technologically literate enough to master the QR code.
The QR code the intention was for like a link in New York City or flyers, things
totally
that
get it. Yeah.
Click on. Yeah.
And Deirdre and then Seema.
I attended the meeting as well. Just in regards to social media, I think it should be on all platforms, not just for Twitter, because after this new administration came in, I got rid of my Twitter account, and I think a lot of other people did. And then I don't know if has a Instagram, that might be a good option too. But for Facebook, if Alex is able to access it and post it, it should be featured at the top of CB7's Facebook page so that it won't get lost. And the same thing for Instagram, if CB7 has that, just so it won't get lost and people could pay attention to it right away. I don't know if there's a LinkedIn account for CB7. That is another platform I think that should be utilized as well.
Only Instagram, Facebook, and X.
Okay, so those should be, the letter or the QR code should be featured, so it could just live right there at the top of the page.
Great. I think, right, we're agreed. Whatever social media stuff we have access to, we'll post it on. Go ahead, Seema.
My only question was, has this been picked up by the local blogs, like I Love the West Side and West Side Rag and all those guys?
I thought actually that is what I was going to bring as the next point. I think the two bodies that are most able to speak to this are West Side Rag and Chalkbeat New York. Chalkbeat is the education newsletter and newspaper for New York, and it's really read by everyone in the ed sector. Like, they really do a lot. So I know some of the journalists at Chalkbeat still, not for much longer. They're all aging out. But I'm happy to reach out to Chalkbeat about it, because I do think we need to get it in the press in that way. And I do think West Side Rag is really the way we're going to hear from this direct community.
If you get stuff to me, I'll get it to West Side Rag.
We should.
So
we should do all. Also, I Love the West Side and.
So I wrote to every community blog. I wrote to every major newspaper. I wrote to elected officials. I did all of it, sort of clandestine, I guess, but and sort of below the table here. But obviously, I'm pretty interested in the subject, so I did that over a month ago. I did that probably 2 months ago, just outlining kind of where we were and what the process has been, and looking for anyone to do anything. Now, granted, I'm just a single voice that didn't know anyone. So if we have opportunities to leverage connections and relationships, then by all means, like, please do so. But I did try.
Michael, forward whatever you sent to me.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll call the people at West Side Rag.
Yeah.
And before I call on you, Dan, I just realized I sort of presumptuously answered that. I was like, we should do this. But really, for this, I want to defer to the task force because I wasn't there. And I really am hoping you guys are like leading on this.
Yeah, and this was before the task force. Sorry, Dan, to jump again. This was, like I said, this is probably back in like May.
No, that's
like early
excellent
May.
to hear, Michael. And go ahead, Dan.
Do a story. I'm sorry, I want to address that. If you're going to get people to cover a story, you have to present them a story. You can't just say there's this issue out there. There has to be something that is in small bites, that is easily digestible, that you know what the message is, and that you communicate it really clearly. And it's better if it comes from an organized group, because that gives you validity. And it's better if you have somebody who can tell the story of why this is a problem. And that means that you need to have the parents who want this to happen. And I understand, Michael, that you're probably one of those parents. But I think we need like a critical mass and not just one person saying, oh my God.
Yeah, I did this in my capacity as a private citizen, not as a member of.
Well, Minna, that's a good point. And I think there's two options. So one would be to ask Gales to send them a release saying we're doing this survey and here's why we're doing this survey, right? Which both gives them the information
that it's malpractice, but yes, we should ask her if she's done it.
And then secondly, I mean, another option is to, and I got to imagine this wouldn't cost very much, is for her to buy an ad.
I think I have a really good contact with them. And I think what I would do is propose that they do a story and send them to the appropriate people to who can then they can write. They are capable of writing and they're capable of interviewing people. So I'm glad to reach out to them and give them some context of who they should be talking to, including Gail and Michael and Dan, if you want.
Roberta, hang on. Are you referring to the West Side Rag?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you have people at Chuck, so you could do the same thing with them.
This is my question to you guys. Do you think that the CB7 Early Childhood Task Force is a body that could be referred to?
I think so, but I also think Gail. I think both.
Yeah, I think that Gail is an essential part of the story, and I think that she would have some good quotes to give, but she can't do it without the parents and without showing that the demand is there. You know,
I agree. It's Deirdre.
Credible story without the parents. Then it's just
which is why the letter was there as that parallel arm of trying to show that there was a request for information.
Yeah.
Which that letter, by the way, again, for the folks on the task force, and again, I was the one that held that up, so apologies, but if we can get just sign off on that, then that can go out as soon as possible.
But in the short term, I do think, again, we're talking about calling attention to the issue, but the immediate challenge is getting people to participate in the survey. So just by getting a quickie press release from Gail's office saying we're doing the survey, here's why. They don't have to go to a lot of length to get a lot of parents. They just need to have the relevant information and how to take the survey that would allow them to publicize it.
Right.
Sure. Do we know that she hasn't done that already?
We don't, but I think by the fact that she only has 70 people signed up, that is an indicator that's not been publicized enough.
No. That's a lot. If you're talking about a survey that an elected official's office does, 78 is a pretty good response. Okay. It's hard to get people to respond. As somebody who worked for an elected official, I only got more when we went to people, door by door, and for sort of were in their face. It's really hard to get people to respond, sort of something that you throw out there.
Yeah, that's really helpful for context to have a sense of, because I too was like, oh, 78 doesn't sound huge, but.
No, and you'll never get anything that is sort of statistically relevant. That's not what these surveys are for.
And what do you guys think about holding another kind of more public task force meeting this summer? Because really a key component is including parents so that they can speak up if they want it, right? We really need that voice. So I'm trying to figure out ways we can kind of bring them into the fold and help them speak.
I think it's a great idea, but probably you'd have to do it soon before the summer vacation exodus.
I think it's tomorrow.
I think that was one of the things that we talked about in that task force a little bit is that, and even at the larger committee meetings, which is just that based on the timing of this, although we've been talking about it for 6 months or so, we're now at a juncture where the ability to sort of engage with people meaningfully is stressed by it being summer vacation. And by that point, you get to September, and when you're in September, it may as well be next September, which is unfortunate and feels like a bit of a tactic. But I think the best we can do is just keep moving forward. And Dan, I can send you and Alex a sample tonight with some potential language for socials and stuff.
Okay.
And then again, folks that are on the task force that are here, they could review and come back with any edits. Everyone has edit privilege on the letter, and that can go out. And then I'll continue to work with Alex to make sure, I know Alex will really do it to see if we can keep that survey up a little bit longer as well. And then Roberta, I'll send you over what I sent out, at least as a starting point, and I'm happy to continue to talk about it to anyone that's interested.
I'm available to meet over the summer, like July. So if anyone could just let me know the dates or in the email thread, just I'm available.
Go ahead, Richard.
I just, it's unrealistic to think anything's going to happen by this September. And I would hold off having any kind of public meeting during the summer if we want to get maximum attendance. I would hold it in September.
I hear you. I agree. Families are like out of town or busy. They're on their summer schedule. The only thing I would really like is to secure, at least hear from a few parents who we could maybe set up with interviews if the press was interested. So if we
And
can
that was a thing that we talked
cultivate
about
that
as well.
relationship.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, because if you can bring forward spokespeople, obviously that's very helpful, both to the elected officials and to the media. I had a thought, we should be wrapping this up, but one idea I had, which mightn't be great, but is an attempt during the summer is maybe to try to get the flyers out to any of the summer camps, like the day camps that do early childhood. The only one I can think of with early childhood offhand would be like the West Side Y, but they also run their own preschool, so I don't know that they'd be particularly interested in sharing the free competition down the block. But I imagine there are some summer camps with early childhood. You're not going to capture the families necessarily that have like the turning threes, but if there's
reach out
other
to
young children, they often have younger siblings.
Reach out to Goddard Riverside.
Well, Kristen, my daughter went to the Y 3K and pre-K, and she's going to the camp. I think you would get a lot of uptake from parents because there's a bunch of parents who have kids, younger siblings. And even though they're siblings, because the Y is so oversubscribed, they don't necessarily get access to it. And
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Families with like young children often have the younger sibling who's not in the process yet.
Yeah.
So Dan, you're our contact for West Side Y.
I'm happy to hand out some flyers once camp starts next week.
That's great. And I don't know who has the flyers. Who can I put in touch with Goddard to share the flyers out with? I suspect for them, we might want to give them some physical flyers.
If you get them to me, I'll get them to them.
I had left some at the community board office. I don't know if there's any left there.
Alex, I see your hand up. Do you have the answer to that question as well?
No, I'm was gonna say in terms of social media, I was just talking to Max, and actually so for social media, you should reach out to Alex Bell, because Alex Bell is in charge of our social media account. So for any language and reaching out about posting and stuff, you should reach out to him. But I'll work with Michael to try to get Lincoln OIC to keep posting it and newsletter related things.
I looked on Gail's website. There's no indication of a press release having gone out on this subject.
So, Minna, do you think it's worth pushing them to ask if they sent a press release?
Yeah, I do think.
Yeah.
I mean, even if they did, it's hard to get news outlets to pick up something like that. But maybe West Side Rad would be willing to run it.
No, I have a contact there, so I'm gonna talk with them and see if they'll do the article, which will be better than getting a press release.
Great.
And Roberta, I just sent you what I had sent previously.
I mean, the reason they like press releases is that somebody else does the work for them, and they are usually low staffed, so that's the benefit of it.
Yeah, I think it's worth doing both because it puts them like on, it's like an on the record quote that they can get.
I could also write an article, so when I talk to them, if they don't want to do it, I can write it.
Then you know who to speak to, Roberta.
Yeah.
Seema, did I see your hand? Did I lose you altogether?
No, I was just wondering also, thinking about all the other camps in the area. Bank Street, I know, has one. I don't know if it's too far away, but I would think they'd be a little more friendly, given the mission.
Well, given that we were hoping they would run the actual school, yeah.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. Oh,
in
wow.
their interest.
Yes.
And Alex, is your hand still up, or is this a new?
This is a new thing related, though. I just wanted to point out that if you want to hold a task force meeting over the summer, you can, or a committee meeting, you can hold it via Zoom until the executive order expires, which is on July 22nd.
My opinion is you should schedule that task force meeting before July 22nd. Do we have any more discussion or update on the Early Childhood Center? Go ahead, Ira. You're muted.
For those of you who may not have read a newspaper or heard the news since Tuesday, there's somebody who's looking for a new job, and his job application is moving fairly far along, who wants to make universal early childhood education throughout the city. So my guess, I'm not going to play prognosticator here, but there's a very good possibility that if we don't establish what this is now for the neighborhood, it's going to be established for us, and it'll be a photo op for somebody in February. So we really need to push this and find a way of making this work. And so I think as we've talked about earlier in the discussion, there are several likely partners to do this. And I think involving those potential partners at this point and bringing them into the discussion would be a very powerful piece of the equation.
And that was, I also reached out to a multitude of candidates, including those who are presumptive at this point. So,
well, I think it may want to be a more formal and.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
I think we're just at the point where it's like anything to move this along is kind of where I'm at. You know, there's no bad press, I think, at this. I appreciate like the other perspectives of, you know, wanting to get it at the perfect moment. It's not wrong, but I also think like it's not wrong to do something. Yeah. So I think we're on a good track.
Okay. And for those of you who haven't read a newspaper or seen any other media, so be it.
And thank you to everyone who stepped up as a part of this task force. Like it's important that we keep it moving, because otherwise it's like falling off the radar, as we've seen. And as Michael mentioned, feels like a tactic. So thank you. I look forward to hearing about the next part. I will follow up with like what I gleaned as like bullet points from this meeting tonight. Should we move to the next agenda item? Which is just, I actually thought, Roberta, are you here in the capacity from budget priorities?
I'm sorry, my computer doesn't like me and it won't let me unmute. I'm actually on the budget committee. I was not here as it, but I'm glad to, I'm very glad to discuss.
I just didn't know, and Egor, I think you are as well, right?
Yeah, I think Miriam was supposed to be here tonight. She couldn't make it, so she asked me to just briefly present, but I think you have the information as well.
No, that's terrific. If you want to present, because I'll give you the little bit that we have so far from our committee.
Yeah, and this will hopefully also be good context for everyone else, which is, for those who don't know, every year, and I think it's due to the charter, one of our responsibilities is putting together a district needs statement. That's what happens in the Budget and Strategy Committee. This happens June through September. So now we're gathering all the information for primarily the district needs statement, which you can see online, but also now I think is it city planning? Are they the ones who have the portal?
Okay, so it is city charter mandated. We, the committee several years ago decided that they wanted all the information at the end of June with additional information as needed up through September. The portal is city planning, and it has very specific ways to enter the information, and then also the budget, capital budget priorities and expense budget priorities. We are working on fiscal year 2027. Fiscal year 2026 starts July 1st. And probably the district needs have not changed that much for YEL from fiscal year 2026. There will be some budget cuts that are coming down from the federal budget, which you won't know about until the big whatever bill is passed, which will probably be sometime early July, at which point you may need to change some of the priorities, because there will be major cuts to Medicaid. There will be major cuts to SNAP benefits, and there may also be budget cuts to the school. You can look at the state budget. Gail's office usually in July meets with the Budget and Strategy Committee to discuss the city council budget and what the cuts are, and she will have a whole list of things. But in the meantime, I think you may not be able to get all your budget items, but last year, thanks to Jesse Nevis of our office, we got a list of every public school that had a nurse and every public school that needed a nurse. So since Jesse is so good at doing this, I think you should reach out to Jesse and ask her to take last year's list and see if any of those schools have gotten nurses or social workers, and then she'll put the list together for you. She's really fabulous with it. She did it in an hour and a half. So I would reach out to Jesse and get the list from her. I would also, I know you were talking with somebody from Goddard. I would reach out to him and ask him what the city is still backlogged on getting money to. So what happens is the city approves a program, an early childhood program, and they sign the contract, and then they're not forthcoming with the money. And so Goddard is big enough that they can afford to take money from that they've gotten to use to cover payroll. But small organizations can't. And so many of our smaller organizations have had to stop and not enroll people. The COLA, there was a COLA increase that was so minimal. So I think you still need to keep the COLA increase in for all the programs. They're still backlogged in Kristen, the school. So I think a lot of the budget requests are still going to be the same, but there may be a few that are going to be a bigger ask. So check with libraries. Libraries usually come out over the summer. So check with the libraries, check with, I would check with Goddard because they can give you across the board for all the other youth programs. And if you have a problem with the contact, let me know and I'll talk to somebody else there.
I have a question about Goddard. They can give us for their programs, but do you think?
No,
I guess they can indicate whether
they know what the budget is. So their requests for COLA are across the board for every youth program. Their requests for, the funding problem is is a huge problem for youth programs and for senior centers. The city signs the contracts and then they don't release the money.
So the other thing I wanted to share with the committee, I realized we don't have a chat. I was going to try to drop the link, but I did email it to everyone just before this meeting, is CEC3 did a very in-depth survey of the physical plant of schools in the district. And I thought we should try to elevate some of those concerns and requests.
So those would be capital.
But our submission about this is at the same time, right? So I can put that in the capital request.
Those go into anything that's a building or a major, it's over $50,000. It's capital. If it's Richard,
Roberta, all over the city has not been paying its bills.
Exactly.
And there are billions of dollars owed. And there are a lot of organizations that are going to just go by the wayside because they can't pay payroll. Would it be appropriate for us to say something about that in our district needs or in our, anywhere?
Absolutely.
I mean, to me, it is the number one issue in the city of New York today.
My son worked for an organization in the Bronx that told people in December that they might have to fire the entire staff because they only could make 2 more payrolls.
I'm on the board of an organization that's owed $6 million.
Yep.
And there's no
wiggle room.
No dispute about it's owed. And no one can give them a straightforward answer as to why it hasn't been paid, but it's been going on for more than a year.
Oh, it's been going on for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And
it's just it's something that we ought to, maybe with another committee, we ought to make a big deal of.
Yeah.
Right. So that's beyond just like the YEL committee. I think that's like a full.
I mean, that's a full board kind of. But maybe we should get the ball rolling. Maybe talk to other committees, etc.
Yeah. Do you think it
it only affects 2 committees. It affects YEL and it affects HHS.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, I was going to say, wouldn't it make sense, given the gravity of the situation, that maybe we have a resolution which includes a letter to our elected officials stating that, these bills need to be paid because of the dire consequences if they're not paid.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. I have to warn you that the organization I'm involved with has done all that. And it's a brick wall.
No, understood, but I meant coming from the community.
Yeah, I mean, sure, it doesn't hurt.
I think it could be a joint letter from HHS and YEL.
And it's probably something that the borough board should pick up on as well.
And maybe we do it jointly with other community boards, since it is a citywide problem.
Well, that would be borough board.
Okay.
But I hear you about doing it jointly with HSS. That's another HSS in my life. That I think we've already passed some sort of resolution on it. I will look back.
No, you have.
So we can just write the letter without having to pass a new resolution.
Exactly.
Unless you think, like, our next full board is not until September. So unless you think we need to do, hang on, Roberta, unless you think we need to do a resolution to like bring attention to it again.
I think a letter is perfect because you have a resolution. You had the resolution a couple of years ago.
Are we aware of the names of organizations in Community Board 7 that are affected? Do we have a list or any kind of
I think we'd need to look again because that resolution was pretty old. At the time, we looked at a bunch of nursery schools and preschools.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like, if they're even operational any longer.
But it's also, and if we involve HHS, it's also after school.
Yeah.
And also at all social programs. I mean, it crosses every agency, it's just awful.
I think given the gravity of the situation, the fact that the last resolution was 4 years ago, I think we need to have something current.
Right.
Why don't I start and ask around? I have a list of all the senior centers. So I can give you that list, and I'll ask Goddard if they can give me a list of all the after school and preschool programs.
And I can probably get a list from my board of those agencies in our district. I'll try to get that to you.
Well, we know the agencies. What we need to know are the
agencies that are not being paid.
The organizations that are not being paid.
That's what I mean. I'm sorry. Yeah.
The organization, not the agencies.
Correct.
Yeah.
Kevin, would you be willing to draft the resolution on this, knowing it won't be passed until September when we have
That's
full board?
fine. I'm very happy to do it. I just think that it's just irresponsible of the city to not pay its bills, especially to the organizations that need the money the most.
Well, they've already approved the problem is they've already approved the contract. They've already paid their employees. They've already bought the food. They've already
right.
Right.
And you can't
lay off a staff.
You can't lay off a staff and then rehire. That doesn't work. Now, and I think it's important that we do this now, because my guess is that the fault lies with the mayor's office.
Yeah.
And we are probably going to have a new mayor come next year, and I think we ought to make a record so that when this guy hits the ground, he understands what's going on, and he'll take steps to correct it.
And the controller's office.
And yeah. I mean, it's not
They're
really the
supposed to grab us
controller.
with.
It's not the controller. It's the mayor. And
But Seema's been waiting to speak, so go ahead, Seema.
To bring up process question, we also at Land Use are having a resolution that we need to have passed that's time sensitive. And Beverly gave us the advice that we could probably pass it through the executive committee as a proxy for the whole board, and then it would get ratified in September. So that would give us the ability to sort of speak on behalf of the board. Maybe that's something that you guys want to do, given how sensitive this is.
And you could refer to the prior resolution.
Yeah, the only concern about that is that I think it's only for a certain type of vendor. Like I think it was child care related. And if you're doing it joint with HHS, you probably just want it to be broader, I would imagine.
Yep.
Yeah. Can someone share that old resolution?
Yeah, I'll have to look it up in our.
It was before my time.
And Kevin, I'll get you the list of all the senior centers. And
Okay.
then I'll start working on the list of the preschool and after school programs. It's preschool, elementary school, and middle school after school programs.
But also after school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Egor.
Yeah, just to give a bit more context, I looked it up and there was a comptroller's report on this exact issue from I think under 2 months ago. So it's kind of making the rounds, and I wouldn't be surprised if the current comptroller has a role in the new administration. So I think bringing it up, it's good timing. It's kind of in the news again.
Yeah.
Egor, can you circulate that report?
Sure thing, and it has some good information on what the outstanding contracts are, which agencies.
Thank you.
And it should go to those agencies as well as mayor and all our elected officials.
All right, excellent. So I'm so good at delegating suddenly, but Kevin, it's a new skill. I'm very into it. So Kevin, you're going to lead on drafting this resolution. I'll defer to you guys to figure out if you think it should go through steering, like through the executive committee, or if you want to wait for full board. The benefit of full board is it's a more public statement, and then we might include more people in it. And you'll be in communication with Roberta and Richard about it. I think we should think about reaching out to HSS. Is that what our committee's called? To bring them in. I keep thinking of hospital for special surgery. Sorry. To bring them into the conversation, because I think we might want to co-author it, since it's the same issue for them. And Egor, you're going to share. You may have already done it. Sent that controller's report out. All right, Seema, your hand is up. I don't know if it's anew or if we are done with this item. All right, I think this item is done.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Are you going to reach out to Jesse about the nurses and social workers?
Yeah, so Egor, the thing I need from you or from like the budget folks is if you can just send me that link again to show so that I can compare last year's request.
It's up on our
The table,
website.
right?
It's up on our
Yeah.
website. It's up on our website. It's
Yep,
under,
and it's in, hold on, Roberta, and it's in the Airtable, correct?
yeah, but it's easier to access it from the district needs statement.
Our website is terrible. I got to be honest.
I'll send you the link. I'll send you the link.
Thank you. And does
It is
that
terrible.
have the responses from the city agencies?
That's on the Airtable. And it's also in a letter that we sent in March, so we can send you the letter as well.
Okay. Because I will draft, what we asked for last year with what we're asking for this year. I would appreciate it if the committee, if you guys can look at that report from CEC3. I actually think it's very helpful. Do we want to take the time now? Do you want me to just like screen share it and we can discuss some of the issues? Or do you all want to consult that on your own? I mean, it's pretty clear, like physical plant issues. You'll see that the reporting is spotty. It really depended on what liaisons were able to find. And I'm happy to consult with CEC3 about it because the thing that falls through the cracks are these programs that are less than $50,000 or projects. So they don't always fall in capital. In like the DOE stream of things, it falls under facilities. They are the ones who are responsible for that part of the building. But they always need a lot of pressure.
Can I just give you a little pointer?
Mm-hmm.
So what I learned last year, if, for example, if it's a library and the library needs 3 things, you cannot have 3 separate items. So if it's the performing arts library and they need 3 things, all 3 things have to go into one ask. So one budget request would be for the performing library for 3 things.
So actually on that, Roberta, would the line items then be by school or by theme? Like bathrooms or big theme?
It would be by school.
Okay.
And I'm not sure about complexes, like the Joan of Arc complex. I'm not sure if it's be considered one complex but I would definitely put it, so PS6, PS7, I'm making numbers up, but anything, if PS8 needed 3 things, put all 3 things under PS8 as opposed to 3 separate things.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
Because they won't allow, when you're entering it, they won't allow you to separate it.
Mm-hmm. Michael and then Ira.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, you were asking how we should proceed. I feel like maybe it's just something you circulate and then we say like review with comments over the weekend, and like Monday is when it's, we're done. Like I think it just need like a hard end on it, but to give people time to just look through it.
Yeah, and to be realistic about this, because I know I have a big day tomorrow, why don't we close it by Friday, 4th of July?
Yeah, I was just picking a day. Yeah. Also, Ira, I know you have your hand raised. Just a quick moment. And Alex, if you're listening in, what I learned, if you've heard me typing in the background, is the QR code that I had up on the, or that I sent over for the flyer that's on the link NYC, that expired today. So I will have to send you a revised QR code on that. It also unfortunately means that any hard copies that have been posted around that I've previously shared are now going to be defunct. So I'll at least, Alex, hit you the updated one, and then I'll send out that other stuff I said. Sorry to jump back to that. But
that sounds good. Thanks.
No, thank you. That's helpful. Go ahead, Ira.
You're muted, Ira.
Okay, what I was going to say was I think Roberta's right, because my experience is when there are multiple schools in a building, there's one principal that's designated the building principal.
No,
And-
it's totally different. This has to
No.
do with the platform. It's the way the platform works, the city.
Okay,
planning.
but I'm saying the way that the SCA works, and for example, when we put in Reso A requests, it's always by the building. And so that's how that mechanism works, whether it's budgeting or not, I don't know.
Okay.
But the way it is the money has to come together in such and such a
Into
way
the
to get
building.
administered and to actually fall into place.
Then that's probably how it works with it.
Now, I will also
City
make one other comment, is that in working with, I worked very closely with PS9 for many, many years, which also, of course, involved center school. And they would have people that would show up one day and say, "Hi, we're here from the Department of Education to replace all your lavatories." And the principal would go, "What?" And that would be the case. And they would come and replace all the lavatories. Same old pipes, new lavatories. So it's what I was also going to say is a lot of these smaller projects are actually best done by the Division of School Facilities. And those little things that are like the $50,000, the SCA can't do them. They're just too set in their processes to break free of them. It's like hiring, for you lawyers here, it's like hiring Simpson Thatch Bartlett to argue a traffic ticket.
So this is actually a question, though, for the budget committee. There are definitely a lot of projects in there that are smaller than SCA that would usually go to facilities. I think what it sounds like is the schools could use a little leverage and pressure. I mean, the reality is facilities always tries, but they are understaffed and underfunded.
So just so you know,
could we include it in our budget, or is that not appropriate because it's under 50,000?
We're allowed to put 25 items into capital budget. That includes every committee, all of CB7. We're allowed to put 35 or more into the expense budget.
Well,
So
Roberta,
we could, if it's a lot of things, we could lump them together.
That's what I was going to ask. You could take five schools and say they need new roofs.
Right, we could do that. We could say new roofs are needed, TS X, Y, Z, and H.
Okay.
If there were 3 schools that need air conditioning, we could lump those together.
All right.
The nurses
that might be the way to do it.
We lump the nurses together, but we put, these are the schools that need nurses. And we lumped the social workers together. We said, these are the schools that need social workers.
Right, because the salary lines are always bigger, and that's expense rather than capital.
Right.
Overnight in Lakewood, Connecticut, you can look for with temperatures around.
That's not me. I don't have a news report. So I did circulate that CC3 document. It was like literally right before the meeting. I was like, oh, I want everyone to see this.
You want to forward it to Egor and me as well? Or ERW committee, forward it
I'll
to
send
me.
you the link. Yeah. It sounds like we have our action items. So, Michael, you're the default lead on the task force just because you raised your hand too many times. I mean, obviously, I imagine you all are doing that in consultation. So we will stay in the loop on that. Kevin, I managed to pawn off the resolution on the city actually paying its bills with you, and you'll be in communication with Richard and Roberta and our HSS committee. Seema, your hand is up. Go ahead.
I found the old resolution, and it's about early childhood and education program providers. I can send that on to you guys, just so you have it.
Thank you. And I remember writing it, so I do know this will have to be broadened because it was just the education providers.
Got
it. And actually, Seema and I will be the ones who stay in communication together about broadening community consultation on the Bloomberg Library Plan and try to get that going over the summer and get it expanded. Because I do think like we definitely, it's such a long process. It's like stunning to me that they're talking about moving on from community consultations so early on.
Yeah.
But
sounds good.
Wonderful. Do we have anything else to discuss tonight? Okay.
Have a good summer.
Can we get a motion to adjourn then?
Happy 4th to everybody.
Motion to adjourn. Happy 4th.
Thank you. Adjourned and happy 4th. Enjoy the summer. Does sound like we'll be talking